Okay, kicking off week 11 on the Corvette build. We're about to flip this thing back over. We're all done underneath here. The last couple of things we did was add in some Pro-Jack tabs on the chassis, so they'll come in from underneath, locate on there. We whacked in a couple of little gussets on the bottom of the forelink. That's the place where they can sometimes get a little crack. We've got that wishbone bracket all painted out, bolted down. We've got 1/2-inch bolts going into the diff and also some 7/16 ARPs locking that all in there. So let's flip it over and get started on that ARB.
Looks good. All the B-roll showing from top side. Okay, car's right side up now. And here we have the big beefy Mark Williams anti-roll bar kit that's going to be going in the car. Probably a little bit overkill for the power that we're making with the small block, but we're just making everything in this car to be able to handle what a door slammer could give. So this is the biggest, beefiest Mark Williams anti-roll bar that you can get. We're going to weld this big piece of 3-inch chrome moly to these end caps that Mark Williams supply, and then they slide through this bearing here, which you weld with those 2 plates to the chassis, and then these arms that also come in the kit go all together like that, and then come through this link which we got off Tim McCamus, and that goes down to the diff to stop it from torquing up. So that's going to be a good bit of gear, and it's probably going to be one of those ones where you spend 4 hours on it but you feel like you've done a week's worth of work. So let's get into it.
And that can get overlaid into... Oh yeah.
That's all, I'll leave that on.
Anti-roll bar, 4-hour job. Nah, wrong. We've put the bearings into place in here. We've found that the bearing support is not sitting down on the bar properly. It's actually made for this smaller size bar. So if we were to mount it on the larger bar, which is this size here, if you look on there, these little bolts here would be copping all the load from the anti-roll bar. So it's not actually designed to be like that. It's designed for the bearing support itself to sit down on this size bar. So then all the bolts do then is hold the bearing support in place, and the load is all taken on this aluminium support. It's all taken on the bar itself. So we've had to go ahead and grab a piece of this bar, cut it in half so that it now straddles over the larger bar, put little gussets in there, real pain in the ass of a job, but it's what we needed to do. So then now that becomes the adapter to get us onto the bigger bar. So this will be welded onto the larger bar, and then the brackets will be welded around the side. That's 4 hours work. Now we'll go ahead and start mounting the ARB. All right, we're getting onto the carbon brake conversion on the Mark Williams diff. We've got to give a big shout out to Travis over there at Mark Williams, who helped us out to make sure we had all the parts we needed to get this deal done. So he sort of, from the part numbers we sent to him, there is 2 different size stubs on these Mark Williams, and the carbon brake only goes on the larger stub. So he supplied us with some little spacers that step our smaller stub axle up to the big bearing which the carbon brake needs. So he supplied us with all those, and then because of the bigger bearing, the brake mount needed a bigger hole, so he machined some new ones of those out for us. They all just clipped on beautiful. And this gear's all brand spanking new, but because of the mile an hour that we're going to be running, we need to go to the carbon. So get these little beauties, quite a bit lighter, so we're really reducing the rotating mass of the rear end. But it's only $9,000. That's what it cost us to do the conversion. So it was one of the most painful little things we did on the car was this carbon brake conversion. And the whole gist of the story is in January this year, out of the blue, we picked up 5 mile an hour, ran 225 miles per hour, which there is an ANDRA rule that once you do that speed, you need to have carbon brakes on the car. So it really happened out of the blue for us with a torque converter change we made. And we rectified it. We basically had to take power out of the car for the rest of the season to keep the mile an hour down. And like we love to, we go by the rules 100%. So we made sure the car never did it again until we got the opportunity to do a conversion like this or to change our car. Lucky for us, one of our fellow competitors towards the end of the season decided to bring it to the ANDRA steward's attention that we had run that time, that we had run that mile an hour, but because we'd done everything right and slowed the car down, it was no issue and we were able to finish out the season. So thanks to those guys for looking out for us, but we've got ourselves sorted now, so we're shooting for 230. So while we're dribbling on about diffs and rules and stuff like that, we'll just do a little thing on a floating rear end and what the difference is. I mean, boosted cars quicker than 7.5 seconds have to have a full floating rear end. A carbureted car can run 650, doesn't need a full floating rear end. So it's a little bit of an antiquated rule, but nevertheless, the rules are the rules. But you know, a few people have asked me, what the hell do you mean by a floating rear end? So I'll quickly show you. So a normal axle in a road car would have the splines on the axle like this and a bearing. And you slip the axle into your car, and in the event that you break an axle, the studs are all connected to the wheel, and the wheel leaves the building, and it's a massive stuff up. You know, you barrel roll and crash and carry on. But in the case of a floating rear end, the hub sits on this. The hub sits on this spindle with two big ass bearings. That goes onto the differential like that, and the axle. If in the event that you break an axle, the wheel doesn't come off because the wheel has nothing to do with the axle. The axle drives through this, what they call the drive plate. So that goes onto there like that. And this axle is just floating in the diff. It has no part or nothing to do with the wheel. So the axle then goes through the drive plate, and that goes in there like that. Comes right through, locks in, and the axle runs on that drive plate. You break the axle at this end or even at that end, and the wheel still rides on those two bearings and no wheels come off or anything like that. So that is a floating rear end.
All right, over on this side of the car, I've just finished welding up the anti-roll bar, and that's all come up trick. Just put a few tacks on the actual anti-roll bar itself, ready for me to pull it out and fully weld it out. We've got these links just starting to come down to where we want to go on the diff. That's gonna stop the car from tweaking up and carrying on. So we'll weld these out, and then we'll be finished for our anti-roll bar as well.
Okay, today we're doing chassis tuning for the layman with Uncle Al. So there'll be no smoke and mirrors and wizardry and big words and complicated formulas and scenarios. We're just gonna talk about like dumb here. The role of an ARB, anti-roll bar in a drag car, actually starts right here. And as you would have seen in HQ Holdens or high horsepower Tiranas with standard chassis, the inertia of the engine whips up so much lift on this left-hand front of the car. You'll see the cars with the left hanging right up in the air. Well, even in a stiff chassis car like this, when you're up over 2.5 or even 2,000 horsepower, all that energy, all that lift is getting transferred back over to the right-hand rear wheel. And that is where the ARB does all its work. But on the way back to the ARB, one of the biggest questions we always got asked with the Tirana was, why do you have it left-hand drive? When they're like, these are American cars. People don't ask the question because they think it's because it's an American car, but it's all related to this lift on this side and to have even weight in the rear of the car. So a drag car will almost always be left-hand drive to assist with this weight distribution in the rear of the car. You can make it work with right-hand drive because John Zappia's car is right-hand drive, and that works just dandy. Yeah, so all that energy is trying to drive this wheel up into the guard, and you'll see that on the HQs and the non-chassis cars. That tyre's trying to get stuffed up into the guard, and that is creating way more drive than the other tyre, and you'll find your car hooking badly to the left. So this ARB, it stops the diff. The diff cannot, that's just the movement in the shock, but that diff cannot move up and down in the rear of the car because this big 3-inch tube is controlling the diff and keeping the tyres even on the track. So we remove the ARB, and all that energy allows the diff to lift right up and pour heaps of traction into that tyre. So high horsepower cars will always be trying to turn left, and this is the reason for it. So another way that you combat this issue is if you hear people talking about winding a couple of flats of preload into the rear of the car, well, that's when you lengthen this top bar on the forelink, and you'll see that it's actually lifting the rear of the car. So the diff's down there now. You notice the diff comes up. That's another way of taking load off this tyre and applying more to that tyre. So that is the role of the ARB, to keep the diff even in the rear of the car. Another thing, when we start scaling the car up and start setting up all the forelink and everything, you'll hear us talking about rear bite. And that's when we have the car on the scales, and we'll be looking for a number around 100 pounds heavier. Have the scales go on all 4 tyres. We'll be looking for a number at 100 or just over more weight on this left-hand tyre. And that is also assisted by having left-hand drive. Well, that's also to help with this compensating the drive from this side over to that side. So there is layman's ARB. Okay, with all the ARB locked away, we're moving on to the shock absorbers and wheelie bar mounts. Now with this modular diff, it comes with 2 bolt holes, one for the wheelie bar mount and one for the shock mount. Now we want to have adjustable shock mounts on the car so we can muck around with the ride height. So we got talking to a good friend of McClure Motorsports, young Brody Zappia, and he runs a similar differential as this, and he made up his own little, CNC'd up his own little adjustable shock mounts to go into this slotted configuration. So it adds 100 mil of adjustment, 5 holes, and then moves the wheelie bar mount out to this lower one and the shock mount out to here, and then this whole deal we can move up and down 100 mils. He redesigned it a bit to suit the bolt sizes and everything that we've got, but it's an absolute work of art. And we really like to thank him for giving some of his knowledge to us and getting these done. But a huge thanks to High Speed Engineering. That's the company that Brody works for. The quality of work that they pump out of that place is absolutely beautiful. This is all CNC'd, and it's a real credit to them. And you need any custom pieces made like this, go check out High Speed Engineering. So that has given us the adjustability we want. All the bolts we have in here, they're just junk. They're just bolts that we're using to mock everything up. So our wheelie bars, obviously they're going to be much shorter than this, 1/2-inch bolts with shoulders, and we'll just have a nice short nuts on there. And we've got our shock, it's all just clearing on the adjuster and everything. But you can see we've got the beautiful Penske shocks. They're just sort of in place there, and we're also looking at where we're going to hang these canisters so they're out of the way of the rubber, and we can easily refill our canisters and everything. But these guys here, you could probably get 10 days in the Maldives for the price of those. They're not your Bali type holiday shocks. They're right up there. So we're well on the way to getting these shocks pretty well locked away. The wheelie bars, it's looking good. The only other thing we've got is the 2 upper bars for the wheelie bar. So the only 2 holes left in the deal is we've got a set of holes here, so we're going to graft a bar into here, and then we've got a couple of holes up on top that they are at a stagger, so we're going to put a little pedestal in there to level that up, and then we're going to send something off of here for those top wheelie bar mounts. So we're very close to having this arse end locked away. The next day or two, it's going to be all done, and the real business end is going to be ready to rumble.
Yeah, go down. Whoa. All right, so we're just about to start fabbing up a top wheelie bar mount for the diff here, and we've knocked it out in 5. No, we haven't. Brody Zapier rang over this awesome little piece by Tony Wood Fabrication. He knocked that out for Brody start of this season for his Mark Williams modular diff, and it fits perfectly onto ours, and he's not using it anymore. So thanks for Brody for knocking that out. Got the wheelie bar on there now, all stretched out the back there. So that's looking pretty good. That's all the back end knocked out, and now we're moving forward to the exciting part, front end, mounting the turbos up, getting them all into position, and this is when I start having fun. This is the business end. So tune in next week. I'm going to start getting into a bit of that stuff, and she'll start really looking like a hot rod.